The detention cell hummed with the low frequency of containment fields, a sound that had become as familiar to Commander James Chen as his own heartbeat. Through the translucent energy barrier, he watched the Kelthari princess sit with impossible stillness, her crystalline exoskeleton catching the sterile light of the Odyssey's brig. "You're starring again, human," Aliana said without opening her eyes. Her voice resonated through the universal translator with a musical quality that made the mechanical interpretation seem almost crude. James didn't deny it. 3 weeks since they'd pulled her unconscious body from the wreckage of her royal escort vessel, and he still couldn't reconcile what he was looking at with everything he'd been told about her species. The Kelthari were supposed to be monsters, the architects of the Scorched Worlds campaign that had left 17 human colonies as lifeless husks. And yet, sitting cross-legged in his brig, this particular Kelthari looked more like an exhausted soldier than a genocidal aristocrat. "I'm trying to understand," James said finally. Aliana's eyes opened, 3 of them arranged in a triangular pattern across her elongated face, each one a different shade of violet. "Understand what? How to execute me more efficiently. Why you're still alive." She rose in a single fluid motion, her 2.5-meter frame unfolding like origami. The containment field flickered as she approached it, sensing her proximity. "An excellent question, Commander Chen. One I've been asking myself with increasing frequency." James pulled up the tactical display on his wrist console, reviewing the battle footage for what must have been the 100th time. The Kelthari strike force had been routing the human defensive line near the Kepler 442 system when Aliana's flagship had inexplicably broken formation. Her vessel had turned its weapons not on the human fleet, but on her own people, destroying 3 Kelthari cruisers before taking catastrophic damage. "You killed your own," James said, "hundreds of them." 473, Aliana corrected, her voice flat. "I knew many of them personally. Admiral Zerkoth taught me stellar navigation when I was 6 cycles old. I counted the seconds as his ship broke apart." The confession hung in the recycled air between them. James had interrogated prisoners before, had extracted information through psychological pressure, strategic revelation, calculated kindness. But Aliana wasn't playing the game. She was simply existing, with a weariness that seemed to extend beyond her physical body. "Why?" James asked. "Because I learned the truth about what we are doing to your species, about what we have always done." Aliana pressed one long-fingered hand against the containment field, and the energy rippled around her touch. "Do you know what the Kelthari call your people in our language, Commander? Krinesh. It means resources that scream." James felt something cold settle in his stomach. "We have been expanding across the galaxy for 12,000 years, Aliana continued. "Every species we encounter follows the same trajectory. First contact, assessment, classification. And if you are classified as Krinesh, which your species was, you are harvested. Your worlds are not conquered, Commander Chen. They are processed. And you expect me to believe you suddenly grew a conscience?" "No," Aliana's laugh was bitter. "I expect you to do what I would do in your position. I expect you to execute the war criminal who stands before you and claim a significant propaganda victory. The daughter of the Kelthari High Sovereign, killed by human hands. It would be good for morale." James deactivated the containment field. The energy barrier dissolved with a crystalline chime, and suddenly there was nothing between them but 3 meters of deck plating. Aliana froze, her body language shifting to something predatory. James could see the calculations running behind her alien eyes: distance to target, available weapons, probability of success. "I'm not going to kill you," James said. "You should." "Probably, but I've read the xenopsychology reports on your species. Kelthari don't betray their own. There are only 7 recorded instances in all our encounters with your people, and 4 of those were explained by neurological damage. You don't have brain trauma, Princess. So either you're the most elaborate trap in military history, or something changed you. Aliana's posture shifted again, the predatory tension draining away. I accessed the Forbidden Archive, she said quietly. The repository of memories from species we've eradicated. My father, the High Sovereign, he ordered it sealed 16 cycles ago, after several young nobles exposed themselves to it and broke. But I believed I was stronger. I believed I could witness the truth of our empire's foundation and remain unchanged. What did you see? Everything. The word came out as a whisper. 10,000 years of first contacts, species reaching out in peace, in curiosity, in hope, and then the moment of classification. The moment we decided they were Krinesh. I experienced the fall of the Singers, a species that communicated through subatomic harmonics. They tried to teach us their art. We processed their entire civilization in 43 days. I felt. Her voice cracked. The archive doesn't just show you events, Commander. It forces you to experience them from multiple perspectives. I felt what it was like to be processed. Hundreds of times. Thousands. James understood torture. He'd seen what it could do to a person, how it could reshape them at a fundamental level. If what Aliana was describing was true, she'd been subjected to the psychological equivalent of genocide, not once, but repeatedly, from the perspective of the victims. So you decided to stop it, James said. I decided to die trying, Aliana corrected. I knew I couldn't change the Kelthari Empire, but I could prevent one more slaughter. Your defensive line was failing. My attack bought you time to retreat. That was all I could do. And now? Aliana met his eyes, all three of them focusing on him with an intensity that was almost physical. Now you should kill me, because if my father learns I survived, he will not rest until I am retrieved, and the force he sends to recover me will not leave your ship intact. James pulled up his wrist console again, but this time he accessed the Odyssey's communication logs. I've been reviewing your ship's final transmissions before it was destroyed. Do you know what you said in those last moments? Aliana's crystalline plating darkened, a Kelthari expression of shame. I apologized to the crews I killed. It was inadequate. No, James said, pulling up the translation. You said, I named them as Keshler. Do you know what our xenolinguists made of that phrase? Her entire body went rigid. You shouldn't have been able to translate that. It's an ancient term before the common tongue. We had context, lots of it. Do you want to know what it means, Princess? I know what it means, Aliana said, her voice barely audible. It means people who matter. It's what the Kelthari called each other in the before time, when we lived on a single world and had not yet reached the stars, before we started calling ourselves an empire. You named humanity as equals, James said. In your final transmission, broadcast on all Kelthari frequencies, you declared that humans were not resources. You made us people in the eyes of your law. A meaningless gesture, Aliana said. My father will simply declare me mad. He will say the archive broke my mind. Maybe, James agreed. Or maybe there are other young Kelthari who have wondered what's in that forbidden archive. Maybe there are others who have started asking questions about why it's forbidden in the first place. You didn't just buy us time with your sacrifice, Princess. You planted a seed. Aliana studied him for a long moment. You truly do not intend to execute me. No. Then what do you intend, Commander Chen? James had been asking himself the same question for 3 weeks. Every protocol, every regulation, every tactical consideration said he should either execute her or hand her over to command for trial and execution. She was an enemy combatant, a member of the royal family of a hostile power, and potentially the most valuable intelligence asset in the entire war. But he kept coming back to that moment in the battle footage, the moment when Aliana's ship had turned its guns on its own fleet. He'd seen sacrifice before. He'd seen soldiers throw themselves on grenades, pilots crash their fighters into enemy vessels to save their wingmen, commanders stay behind to let their crews evacuate. But he'd never seen anyone sacrifice their entire identity, their family, their species, for strangers they'd been taught to view as livestock. "I intend to give you a choice," James said. "You can stay here in comfortable detention until the war ends one way or another, or you can help us." "Help you?" Aliana's plating rippled with what might have been surprise. "I've already betrayed everything I was raised to believe, Commander. What more could I possibly do?" "Tell us about the archive," James said. "Tell us how to access it. If it changed you, it might change others. And if enough Kelthari see what you saw—" "You're talking about weaponizing empathy," Aliana interrupted, "using our own history against us." "I'm talking about giving your people the truth. What they do with it is up to them." Aliana turned away, moving to the far side of the cell, which was no longer a cell, really, now that the containment field was down. She stood there for nearly a minute, her crystalline plating shifting through colors that James's translator couldn't interpret. "If I do this," she said finally, "I will be condemning others to experience what I experienced. The archive doesn't just inform, it transforms. Many who enter it never psychologically recover." "I know," James said, "but you recovered enough to act. Maybe others will too. And if they don't, if all we accomplish is creating a generation of broken Kelthari nobles, then at least they'll know the truth about what they are." Aliana turned back to face him, and James saw something in her expression he hadn't seen before. Not resignation or weariness, but something that might have been hope. "Very well, Commander Chen," she said. "I will help you, but I have one condition." "Name it." "If this works, if we somehow manage to change minds, to end the processing, to make peace, you will help me ensure that what my people have done is not forgotten. The species we eradicated, the civilizations we destroyed, they deserve to be remembered as more than entries in a forbidden archive." James extended his hand, a human gesture he wasn't sure she'd understand. But Aliana reached out, her long fingers wrapping around his in a grip that was surprisingly gentle despite her obvious strength. "Deal," James said. And in that moment, standing in what used to be a detention cell, Commander James Chen of the Earth Defense Force and Princess Aliana of the Kelthari High Sovereignty became something that had never existed before in all of recorded history. Allies across the species divide. The war would go on. The dying would continue. But for the first time since humanity had encountered the Kelthari, there was a possibility of something other than extinction or victory through genocide. There was a possibility of understanding. And from understanding, perhaps, could come peace. And